Well, one of the things I love about doing a podcast is it's kind of like Forrest Gump and the box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. And today I think that is definitely going to be the case. And I'm super excited to bring on somebody who's very astute and knowledgeable about something that I don't know a whole lot about, which is consumer packaged goods, stuff that's made and sold at retail. And so we're going to be talking to an absolute guru in this industry, Dr. James Richardson. He is founder of Premium Growth Solutions. It's a strategic planning consultancy for early stage consumer packaged goods brands. CPG is the other acronym that you might hear us tossing out a lot today. So here's the twist. As a professionally trained cultural anthropologist turned business strategist, he's helped nearly 100 consumer packaged goods with their strategic planning, including brands you may have heard of, such as Coca-Cola, venturing and emerging brands, Hershey Company, General Mills, Frito-Lay, and other emerging brands such as Once Upon a Farm, Dr. Squatch Soap, Proven Skincare, Rebel Creamery, and June Shine Kombucha. James is the author of Ramping Your Brand, How to Ride the Killer CPG Growth Curve. It's a #1 bestseller in business consulting on Amazon, which is not surprising because he sent me an advanced copy. He didn't pay me a cent, but I was like riveted by this book. Again, as a novice in the industry, but there's so much fascinating stuff we're going to talk about. James is also the host of the Startup Confidential podcast, so tons of stuff to talk about. James, welcome to the Go for Launch show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, wow. I always ask people, where are you in the world today?
I am in Tucson, Arizona.
All right. So fun place, warmer than where I am probably, but
yeah,
awesome spot in the country of the United States. Well, I got to, start diving in straight to your background, how you went from being an anthropologist to a business strategist whose first client was none other than Whole Foods. Tell us the story, man. How did that happen?
Staying in the Days Inn for Whole Foods. Yeah, that's a story. I had big dreams as a teenager to become an academic, and they didn't work out, but I did have a great time in grad school. And I had a great time in India. In fact, I learned some things about interviewing there that came in real useful when I transitioned into market research, which is sort of how I got into the business world. And so I did a lot of market research early in my career for the Whole Foods management team when they were growing really fast. They had just bought a whole bunch of chains and they realized, oh no, we need to have a culture.
Yes.
Because what they'd done is bought all these little crunchy health food chains and they each had their own culture.
Did they say we need to figure out how to charge more?
Well, there's a little bit of, they were public companies, so they needed to make profit.
Yeah.
So it was no longer sort of a hippie game anymore. It was real business, and that was a lot of fun. I learned a lot about the cutting edge of where the American diet was going at the time. This was back in 2003, 2005. So it was a lot of fun. I still cite anecdotes from that work. I literally went into like half the Whole Foods in the country at that time, like well over 100. So it's
nice. So
I know
you smell like Gouda. You still smell like Gouda cheese, and it's.
I know more than I should about why it's designed the way it is, yada, yada.
Yeah, there's a lot of, right? Yeah, we could spend hours talking about the science and art of making people buy stuff that they don't really need.
I think what your listeners might be interested in is the social science learnings that our team actually absorbed, mainly because a lot of us were PhD, we were academic sort of refugees. And so we did really good work, much better than our clients needed. And in the process, we learned some really funky stuff about why and how people alter their pantry and just start filling it, like throwing out the Kraft, throwing out the Coke, and just filling it with bizarre things. And if you think about branding, there's a reason why trademarks exist, and it's because it's designed to eliminate choice in that category. So I trust X brand. I've tried it. Now I don't have to think about that anymore. Thank God.
Right. And
so like the idea that you would reopen that box and say, no, let me think about it again. That's a that's it doesn't seem like a big deal perhaps in 2021 because especially in beverages, most of us cycle through all sorts of hip crap on a regular basis.
Yeah.
But but generally in food and beverage, people just don't do this.
Right. No,
It's a
we,
big deal.
right. And one of the things you drive home in your book is just how the human brain works. So obviously as an anthropologist, that's kind of what you study, the culture and what makes
Yeah.
humans tick. And what's amazing is I loved how you said, humans basically, our brains are just big buckets of categories. And that's what happens at retail.
Yeah.
You got to be in a category, right? So you mentioned,
we
and
we
when
put
people,
things, yeah, we put things into a taxonomy
yeah.
unconsciously because it's just we've got to make the decisions quick.
And when people talk to me, and I love branding, the whole concept of
Yeah.
it. But when people argue and say, brands don't matter anymore, I always throw out the fun test, which you've probably done too, James. You go, all right, let's try this. I'm just going to throw out a category and you tell me the first thing that comes to mind. And I guarantee you it will not be generic. And if I say like facial tissue,
Right.
you would say, probably
Kleenex. Yeah.
Kleenex,
Kleenex.
right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
okay, soda.
Mhm.
You probably aren't going to say some wacky kombucha. You're going to say Pepsi or Coke or whatever, personal computer. You'll be
Yeah.
Apple or Mac or what, PC or Mac. Anyway, the whole thing is crazy, but I want to shelve that, no pun
Okay.
intended, for a little bit later in the discussion because the anthropological part of this is just ridiculous and fascinating. But from a business perspective, I want to kind of go back there a little bit because you're an expert on consumer packaged goods. A lot of us see Shark Tank and shows like that, and it looks so sexy. Like, oh, I'm going to come up with some idea in my kitchen or in my garage that consumers can buy, and I'm going to like change the world, right? And that is not as easy as it sounds. So talk to us about the challenges and opportunities for anybody who's thinking about selling a consumer product. And what I'd like to do, James, is ask you to maybe frame that in the form of a couple stories
Okay.
that resonated with you from brands that you've worked with who actually made it, made it over the chasm or whatever we want to call it,
Okay.
got out of the garage, figured out the trials and tribulations. What does it take to start a consumer packaged good?
Wow.
Not an
So
easy question to answer. No problem.
yeah.
Just
So
throw
I
up a
think
softball.
yeah. I mean, a third of my book, Ramping Your Brand, is about design, and that is for a reason. Um, and I think what the people who end up winning have done is they've gone out and they've created something that they were passionate. They were solving a problem in a category that they were passionate about. So I've done some work for a Shark Tank winner, Dude Wipes,
Dude
and these are
wipes.
one of the yeah these are one of the few
Dude,
Shark
yes,
Tank
that's funny.
guests.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
hit my
they're one
ad
of the few.
stream. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, let's tell everybody what that is. Like, instead of wiping
Well,
your butt with,
you and I are
I'm the
their top
target,
consumers. Yeah,
dudes.
it's older.
And it's
Yeah.
like butt wipes for dudes, right? So you don't stink when you come out of the bathroom. It's like snarky as hell. And
Yep.
it's
And
totally on point.
so they're one of the few Shark Tank winners who got a deal, but also scaled.
Okay.
And most of them go nowhere. That even when they get a deal. So that's the sad reality. But see, that doesn't surprise me in this space because a little cash infusion and a glimmer of an idea that's not nearly enough. So I think what happens is there is some luck in the product design where you have like Dude Wipes had lazy sort of toilet paper incumbents. Now the lazy toilet paper incumbent, Kimberly Clark, they had invented the the
The
wet wipe,
butt
the wet
wipes,
wipe.
whatever you want to.
Yeah,
Yeah, the wet
they
wipe
had
for your.
launched the Cottonelle back in the 90s. So
Okay.
just as sort of a just as a lazy line extension, and why the hell not? And part of it was because they were thinking maybe baby wipes will turn into this bigger thing.
Yeah, as
It
adults
did.
like us age, and we,
Right.
want
Well,
to be
because
worried
there
about that.
was the baby boomers were the first to use butt wipes in mass quantities on their babies.
Mm-hmm.
It certainly wasn't my mom.
Right. Cloth diapers for you, my
Yeah. So
friend.
the idea was that they would then fall in love with the whole concept and then take it into their own butt.
Mm,
Didn't really work out that way until
okay.
recently. So what Dude Wipes did that was I just from the outside I think is kind of interesting is because I can't reveal anything confidential.
Sure.
But they first of all, they created an actual butt wipe that was big. I mean, it's bigger than your palm.
Okay. So you're not
Right.
going to
And
worry about
so,
your fingers
so
going
imagine,
through
yeah,
anything.
there you go. So it's like,
Nice.
it's bigger than a guy's palm. And so
Okay.
it's sort of, I used to joke, it's like a fleece blanket for your bum. And so, because it's
Okay.
soft, well, it's as
Hmm.
thick or thicker than a 3-ply toilet paper. And most Americans don't use 3-ply. We use this really bad 2-ply.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The cheap Scott stuff.
You got it. Because quilted northern is like, it's like twice the price per roll.
And it doesn't last as long, damn it.
No. So it's thick, it cleans better. Anyway, so it's a super simple innovation. And that's what I found is like usually the problems are really minor.
Mm,
They're minor dissatisfactions that basically we are trained as human beings to, when we encounter those in life, to just bury them.
mm.
Where we get outraged are, big conflict issues in life, right? Getting fired, having a conflict with your boss, with your wife, and those are the things that are really always top of mind, is those conflicts, those problems. The unconscious stuff are things like, my toilet paper sucks, shreds, and I basically clog my toilet after use so much.
Mm.
So people aren't going to talk about that. Obviously, they're not going to social media their toilet paper problems. So they had this perfect zone where the problem was real for millions of guys,
Mm-hmm.
especially guys with inflammatory bowel disease.
Mm. So it's
They're
not
on
just a
they're on the
scent
can.
issue or
They're on the
cleanliness issue.
can. They're
Yeah.
on the can 46 times a day.
Oh, wow. Okay. So there's some
I kid
serious
you
help.
not. I kid you not. So
Mm.
they're wiping their butt a lot.
Okay.
Right. And I think what's interesting is that, so that's the category. What's driving what's going on in that category, right?
Yeah.
So they had the better.
It's a great product.
By design. They just
Yeah.
happen to design it for themselves intuitively, but and sometimes that works.
Yeah.
And they listen to their customers. They got the market validation. But see, that isn't enough.
Yeah.
You have to let word of mouth work.
Mm-hmm.
That takes several years usually. And if you're undercapitalized, like most of my clients, you can't go out and immediately start spending $1 million a year, or
Right.
$1 million a month, which is what the direct-to-consumer unicorns are doing.
Mm.
By the
Because
way, all these case studies you read of in the media, they don't really tell you what anything costs.
Yeah. So sticking with this dude wipes example, I imagine, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but historically speaking, I would think most consumer packaged goods companies started small and then scaled, along the way. Is that what they did, or did they have some kind of hockey stick effect based on funding or something else?
They had the hockey stick effect of online.
Okay. Got it. Now, is it still possible though?
They launched on Amazon.
Okay.
And they launched on Amazon before launching on Amazon was sort of obvious to anybody, and with a specialty product that was didn't have the power of shelf access. So that ended up it was sort of it was slow in the beginning, but it actually took off pretty fast.
Okay.
And it took off fast enough that they then went into retail. And there you can easily make some blunders by if you haven't done your work on where in the brick universe you really should be going.
Yeah.
But they had a specialty product that was a premium price. It cost 40-50% more than Cottonelle, or even more, right? So if you were just there for a cheap butt wipe, it wasn't for you.
Yeah, you could get the Cottonelle or whatever.
And they had an intriguing brand identity, right? Which is the name itself, right? It kind of speaks to it. The brand identity tapped into something that was going on around the founders. I think at the time they were in college and came up with it, which was the men's personal care grooming movement.
Yeah. And
that's been really big amongst millennial men, but actually it's all ages.
That's right.
So
yeah, but nobody's gonna tell you they got the dude wipes in their backpack. So when they're at the client site, I gotta go to the restroom. I'm gonna come out smelling like a rose. I'm not coming out smelling like crap.
Yeah, exactly. Or I don't want to. I need to actually get clean, and toilet paper never works, especially toilet paper in a hotel or food service or like commercial environment. That's the worst toilet paper. And that is literally the thinnest shred of wood pulp you've ever put on your bum.
That's right.
So they had they had the unmet need that marketers like to point to, right? But it was really one of those things where, um, you know, uh, they kind of stumbled into the unmet need, and this is something I talk
Mm.
about, right? They were interested in scent.
Okay.
They want, and that's not a irrelevant thing
Right.
for guys. Like they no longer want to come out smelling like that, because they're gone are the patriarchal days where you're now in our society where the man
Yeah. Sweating.
is,
Mm.
well, no,
Musk.
the man is immune from criticism around those things, right?
Yeah.
Because they're the patriarch.
Yeah.
Right now, men are not. We've been flattened, right? So the gender hierarchy is flattened. So you can attack men for their bad grooming habits, right? You would never have done that to like a middle-aged guy 40 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, you would never dare to do that because he literally chewed you out.
Mm. So things,
Right? So it's
yeah.
just
So like back to the anthropology shifts in culture and things like that.
So now men have to adopt female grooming code. That's what's going on.
Okay.
Now, that's
manscaping.
That's super offensive if you put it that way, right? To these guys, like if I hand that conclusion to them, they're like, no, I don't know, I'm just trying to take care of myself.
Yeah, macho man.
But what's funny is you've got these other brands like Dr. Squatch Soap, and they're all on the same trend, which is at all ages, guys essentially adopting female grooming standards.
Interesting. So there'll be a lot of stuff coming in that category.
And so there's so many businesses being created on that. And I think if you can identify that and embrace it, it will help you.
Yeah.
You know, embrace for them a non-standard sort of approach to branding, because like a classically trained marketer from Big Co, from Kellogg Management School would tell you this is a dumb brand identity because you just eliminated 50% of the audience.
No, it isn't. And
you know, and it's just,
no, because marketing and branding and anthropologists would say niche down. Niching down is the way to go. Like, you know, so go 1 mile deep and 1 inch wide.
And I think the guys who have the biggest problem with how toilet paper functions are those guys ironically, with bowel disorders who are male, and actually the Venn diagram is probably them, and then like people who have high-powered professional careers.
Interesting.
Right. Because they're in public, they're speaking, you know, and they
don't want to, they want to be,
they want to be clean.
They don't want to have any issues, bodily issues.
You don't want to have a breakout of hemorrhoids essentially while
you're
trying to talk for 90 minutes in front of your clients.
Man, God, James, I did not realize where this
turned off all
going.
your listeners. But this is, if you're willing to embrace this kind of dissatisfaction seeking, you are a really good innovator. So I think social scientists are used to that because, like, in cultural anthropology, we're basically trained to focus on the weird and marginal.
Sure. And a lot of, let's face it, and a lot of products start with problems. Somebody had a problem.
Yeah.
You know, like I saw one woman on Shark Tank, she didn't like the way her salad spinner worked. And we've got one of those. It's like a 3-piece of, you know, bowl that you put your lettuce in and you put water and you spin it around, and it's bullshit. And she came up with like this piece of cloth, and it looked dumb as hell, but I'm sure she's selling 1 million units. But anyway,
so some people don't have a great solution to the problem. That's the second thing. But I think the other thing is you have to put in an enormous amount of work to get the retail trade out there. You have to put in the work to advertise and build awareness. And this is literally, it's nothing other slogging in the mud. That's all it is. There's nothing glamorous about it. There are tactics and things that you can use, and those change. But I think that just having the product, i.e. solution, is never enough. And I think Dude Wipes is a great example of that slog, you know, because they've done it now, but it took them 10 years.
Well, and there's obviously, and there's a lot going on now. It's obviously easier if you start a company, like you said, Dude started on Amazon, right? A lot of people start there because they can. It's there. It's the big behemoth. But ultimately, I guess if you want to succeed as a CPG, consumer product brand, you got to be in retail locations, right? And that is all about the big D, which is distribution, which you talk a lot at length about in the book. And like, they're a great example. I'm sure when they came out, it was possibly difficult for them to get slotted, or basically it's, you talk about the early brands chasing what you call doors, or in, I guess the
Yeah.
shorthand for that is just basically getting in more retail distribution points, right?
Right.
Um,
Well,
yeah,
you're talking about retail wipes for the bum for the adult is
yeah,
it's not a really mature category in terms of
yeah.
merchandising. So,
So
you have your say 10, 20, $30 million business. You think you're doing great, but to the retail ecosystem,
you're just
it's
like,
like your category is tiny, you're
yeah,
annoying. Where do I put you?
I got to
And so
take a little space to put your crap in there. No
yeah,
pun
yeah, it's a
intended.
pain.
Where I
Right.
could
And
throw a bunch more
so I think that
Charmin up there or whatever. Yeah.
people who are building insurgent brands in newer categories or just smaller ones, and that's very common actually, like hard kombucha, great example. Hard kombucha is essentially kombucha with the alcohol left in as opposed to burned off,
Mm.
right? It's like real kombucha. So and you can also yeast it up so you get a higher alcohol content, but that's a small category too, growing really fast. There's a bunch of players, but it's again, where do you put it? Well, they put it right next to the hard seltzer.
Yeah.
They don't know where else to put it in the beer aisle. It has nothing to do with hard seltzer, but it doesn't
Yeah.
taste anything like it. It's just like, so that's a battle, and this is part of the slog in
Yeah. And
retail is that you have to be patient enough to let shoppers slowly realize, okay, this is where to look for it. Yada
right.
yada.
And it's almost portrayed in your book as this misconception that a lot of these young, companies have, that they gotta get more doors, more distribution. And you stated, and I want to talk about this from the book. You said not even the most successful new brands launched in the past 25 years
Yeah,
use distribution alone to scale. And you mentioned some,
yeah.
great names:
My favorite
DiGiorno
one,
Pizza, Activa
yeah,
Yogurt.
yeah, my
Yeah,
favorite was DiGiorno and
yeah.
Activia because they scaled very quickly, like a big company should,
Mm-hmm.
right? They get to $100 million really fast, 1 or 2 years, but
Whoa.
they kept growing for years,
Okay.
right? So, and that rarely happens, by the way, for brands launched at public companies in the U.S.
Yeah.
Very hard to launch out of the gate like a unicorn like that,
Yeah.
all outlet, and then keep growing. But that's because they
Yeah.
didn't rely on distribution alone. They had unbelievable advertising campaigns. Activia ran contests. They ran a national televised
Mm.
contest, the 14-day challenge, and they did it for the first like 3 or 5 years of the business, which was brilliant.
Yeah.
It gamified trial,
Yeah.
right? So have one activity every day for 2 weeks, and they were targeting constipated women. I am full of great topics,
Okay.
but that's what no, but that's who the target was. It was
Right.
basic and constipated women who don't poop for 4 days.
All right. Excellent.
And this
That's
is
a
like
niche market.
there's millions of them
Yeah.
though.
Yeah. And eventually guys like me who are not a constipated woman will also eat Activia.
Well,
But
sure, because it's
yeah.
in the fridge.
Yeah.
So,
Well, here's the point that I think you make in the book
yeah,
very well, is that chase for that distribution can often lead people
yeah,
astray very fast. And you say the alternative is you really should be focusing on trying to be memorable,
yeah,
especially if you're young, and like a dude example where you're kind of creating a new twist to a category. So you
yeah.
got to think of that consumer's brain category. Like, I don't have a category yet for butt wipes. I got to make one and then put
Yeah.
you in it, top of the funnel.
Well, from a marketing perspective, it's really ideal to be an insurgent in a younger category because
Mhm.
you will almost assuredly be the category to most of your consumers.
Yeah.
And that's a rare privilege. It's very different. Like if you're trying to launch like a box mac and cheese brand, good luck,
Yeah.
because now you're fighting two massive incumbents,
Oh yeah.
and there's not a lot of position left that's of any interest to anybody. But Dude Wipes had a real advantage, which is that they had, they were offering scented wipes, totally new, and real big ones. Like one that would just make sense.
Yeah.
It feels different, and I think by just running with that and giving it time, being patient, uh, they they were able to get to a scale online where they had the cash flow and everything else to go to retail and not completely faceplant.
Yeah.
And that's
Because
really important because that's
right.
not uncommon, is to faceplant coming off an initial D2C success because you just had no idea what those economics were and just how much easier it is to use a social media campaign to drive trial
Mhm.
to a website than trying to use marketing and awareness building tactics to get people to remember you when they go shopping next time. That's a very challenging journey.
Yeah, and the other thing you try to make clear to these folks reading the book is
Yeah.
like, look, stop trying to do, and if you're watching it,
Right.
stop trying to go for that hockey stick approach. And you have a
Yeah.
whole different theory called the skate ramp. Can you just take
Yep.
a minute to explain what the skate ramp
Yeah.
growth looks like?
The skate ramp is the one thing it has in common with the hockey stick is you've got that low scale in the early years, right? But
Mhm.
what's actually going on with the skate ramp is that you are exponentially growing.
Okay.
You're,
So
you're
the
not really
curve on
flat
the,
at all.
yeah, the curve, if you're looking at an XY axis, it's going
Yeah.
up and to the right, but a lot slower. It's not like going right off the
Yeah,
charts. Like,
exactly. And it doesn't suddenly go vertical, right?
yeah.
So or it doesn't until the real far end of the curve. But the issue with how you run the business is that you're doubling the sales every year off a small base. So you start at 1 million, right? And so in those first couple of years as you're doubling, the retail trade's not going to notice. The consumer world isn't going to notice. People magazine is not going to notice. You're
Yeah.
just as invisible as when you started, but you can see that you're doubling. If
And
you can
by the
do,
way,
if you
yeah,
can, if you can do,
doubling is not damn bad, right?
no, it's
That's
fantastic.
yeah.
It's absolutely, and it's also very hard.
Yeah,
So
but
the
you
easiest,
yeah.
the easiest way to double your business, though, for your listeners, is to actually convert 20, 30, 40% of them into habitual users.
Yep.
And then the rest of them, you can basically jettison them as one-time triers.
Sure. I remember you told one story in the
Yeah.
book about a client. I'm not going to name because I don't know if I can remember, but it was somebody, maybe a husband, wife. They were sort of panic stricken and they brought you in and they were like,
No, yeah.
James, we need to get to $6 million in revenue next year. That's our goal. And you were sitting there going, they're only doing like 1 million or something. I don't remember. It was like
Yeah.
real
Yeah.
stupid,
It was a
path to-
fantasy.
and so you were very good about asking them, why do you want to get there? And they're like, because we're working our asses off and we don't get paid and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, so you just
all
need
the
to
wrong
pay
reasons.
yourself, right? How about, what would it feel like if we could get you to 2 million? Would you be able to pay yourself more? Would that be better? And the woman apparently sat back and she was like, yeah, that would be great. And you're like, okay, our goal is $2 million.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about how we can double. Boom. And
if
that's
anyone
so
listening
awesome.
is running and wants to be a consultant, that is your
That was a good
501
trick.
class, because you've got, sometimes your clients are just delusional, and even though they're paying you, your job is not to service the delusion. That doesn't help any. That's a schmuck's approach to consulting.
Yeah. And like you said, it goes back this word patience, man. A lot of people need to have, I would imagine in consumer packaged goods, you got to have the patience of Job in some cases, because you're just fighting these behemoths. You got to figure out all the peculiarities and the complexities of the distribution and all that shit.
So you have consumer trust you have to build, and that's enough of a problem.
Yeah.
But for CPG, especially in retail, you have none of the stakeholders that get you to the shelf trust you either. And and they don't care about you. So,
and some of those distributors, it sounds like they're kind of cutthroat, right? You pay them enough, they'll get you on the shelf, but then 6 months later, you might be kicked off or sooner.
Well, if you can't maintain, distributors are a lot more lenient on slow moving stuff for small goods, because they use small brands to pad their trucks and maximize their truck mileage profit. It's a trucking business.
Okay.
Trucking business, man. It's just so they actually have no problem with small businesses. They do have if you're like literally selling nothing for months out of their warehouse, then you're going to lose the slot. That's rarely a problem for a lot of startups. It's the retail velocities. It's when those are suboptimal that they get delisted, and it's because they haven't done the planning and raised the money, or just planned, what they're going to have to do to get excitement with people in a local area.
Yeah. What does that mean? Velocity. You're not moving enough product.
You're not selling
buyers
enough units per store per week is how they analyze it.
Okay.
And it's kind of a crude measure, but if it's not, every category buyer will have certain sort of floor minimum, which you should always be asking what it is. And that's the sort of the code red. Oh dear, we're going to lose this whole pipe, basically this distribution pipe, because we can't move the product. Yeah. And it's not uncommon for startups to be attractive, say way to a Safeway region and go in, but the buyer's not going to really do much for you because you don't make them any money. So they don't give you enough assistance. The retail staff in the stores aren't helping. Your thing is on the bottom shelf; it's invisible, and then you then get delisted because no one sees it.
Yeah.
And I think this is happening every day.
Mm,
So how you enter retail when you want to do it in CPG is really important, because you have to assume what I talk endlessly in the book about. You have to think about the board. You have to think about the shopper, literally their emotional state as they're
mm.
walking through a Safeway or Kroger. They don't care about your business. They probably don't know you exist. They're just trying to get a shopping trip done. And I think when you have that level of empathy for the shopper, it should scare the bejesus out of you. And that fear should then motivate you. What are we going to do to get that person's attention?
Interesting. So
And
it's
if
so
you're not,
funny.
if you're not that scared,
Yeah.
you are not going to succeed.
It's funny that you, yeah.
So,
I'm going to bring this back to the dude because it's so funny. I was walking through the grocery store with my wife a couple weeks ago and I noticed out of the corner of my eye, oh, look, interesting. There's a little slot of dude wipes right there. And I was like, hey, I just heard about these guys. And like, how long have they been around? 10 years, you said? I mean,
yeah, I
like,
mean, it is not from yesterday. Yeah.
right. So it's the slow burn deal. But
Yep.
James, this has been a great conversation. We could go on for hours, but I, want to keep it to 30 minutes so people can listen in the car, gym, or wherever.
Great.
Tell us where people can learn more about, because I'm telling you, listeners, if you are thinking about doing the consumer packaged goods route, you're going to need an expert like James to help navigate this incredibly crazy jungle of selling at retail. Where can they learn more about you, your business, and the absolutely awesome book, Ramping Your Business,
Ramping Your Brand is a book
your brand?
on Amazon.com right now. It's also on Audible. If you have an Audible membership, open up the app. You should be able to find it there as well and use your credits. If you want to learn more about what I do, you can go to premiumgrowthsolutions.com. I will have the book discounted when this airs. So
Excellent.
right now it's on sale.
All right. Well,
So,
everything that he just mentioned will be linked over at the show notes page at goforlaunch.io/show138. Dr. James Richardson, anthropologist and brand strategist, thank you so much. This has been a fun conversation. Again, kind of a Pandora's box of chocolates, whatever you want to call it. Let's call it a box of chocolates because then we can put a brand name on it. But fun stuff. I learned a lot. And absolutely, if I ever have to go down that path, I'm calling you because I don't want to try to figure this out. And I don't want a hockey stick that goes like that.
Yeah.
And Mr. Wonderful telling me I'm a moron when I should have been looking for the skate ramp and doubling every year.
Yep.
And then I get to $10 million and everything's good.
Right.
So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.